This is chapter 2-6, proving statements about angles, part 3. Please copy your codes. Alright, we're going to continue. Just a quick review. Postulate 12 is linear pair postulate. We discussed this on the last video. Remember again that postulate 12, the linear pair postulate, is two angles that form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. So here we have a diagram drawn with angles 1 and 2. Okay? If these angles 1 and 2 form a linear pair, that means that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 will be equal to 180 degrees. Okay? So if we were trying to find the measure of angle 2, given that the measure of angle 1 is 135 degrees, we can solve for the measure of angle 2. Simply plug it into an equation. Because it's a linear pair, we know that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180 degrees. By substitution, I'm going to put 135 degrees in for the measure of angle 1. Giving me an equation such that it reads 135 degrees plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. Subtracting 135 degrees on both sides of the equation, I'm left with, on the left, the measure of angle 2 equaling 45 degrees. So I now know the value, or the degree measure of angle 2, which is 45 degrees, because angles 1 and 2 added together form a linear pair. Please remember to memorize, study, and understand postulate 12. Next postulate. We also discussed Theorem 2-6, which is the vertical angle theorem. And again, we've talked about this back in chapter 1 in addition to this particular chapter and section. Vertical angles are congruent such that when I'm given the following diagram here, two angles that intersect, if that is true and I have vertical angles, we should remember that the vertical angles 1 and 3 are congruent to one another, and also angles 2 is congruent to angle 4. Understanding that, we want to solve a proof. Let's suppose we're given the following information. Angle 5 and angle 6 for a different problem are a linear pair, and angle 6 and angle 7 form a linear pair. We need to prove that angle 5 is congruent to angle 7. Okay? Remember, we need to think to ourselves, what are the 3 steps for writing a proof? Step 1, we need to write what's given, and it is written for us. We also need to make sure we draw a diagram of what that looks like. And we do have a diagram which is from your book. I believe this is example number 4. Please refer to your textbook. Okay, we have a diagram that looks something like this here. Okay, so now we have the given, written, and a pictorial diagram. We move on to step 2, which now states that we need to think about what we need to prove. We need to prove that angles 5 and 7 are congruent. And I mark up my diagram, and I look at that, I immediately see what, and which leads me to step 3. Write down the definitions, postulates, theorems that will let me prove that angle 5 is congruent to angle 7. Well, when I look at this drawing and I've marked it up, I immediately say to myself, wow, that looks like vertical angles. And vertical angles are congruent. Now I just need to prove this. Okay? Write a 2-column proof. I have the statements on the left with the reasons on the right. The first portion is given. Angles 5 and 6 form a linear pair. These two form a linear pair. And angles 6 and 7 form a linear pair. That information, again, is given to us. What's the next statement? The next statement says that angles 5 and 6, these two here, which are the linear pair, are supplementary. And angles 6 and 7 are also supplementary. And the reason is the linear pair postulate. The linear pair postulate, which we've already studied. And then finally, number 3, I know that angle 5 is congruent to angle 7, by congruent supplements theorem. Congruent supplements theorem. Okay? And this concludes your lesson for 2-6, part 3.